All right, can you hear me? You really do have to. Okay. All right. Good morning, Mayor. Oh, Mayor's not here. City Council. I haven't really had the opportunity to be in front of you since I've gotten the director position. So I just wanted to take a moment and just let you all know, like, I've worked with some of you as my capacity as policy analyst, but I'm really excited about this opportunity and that I've been chosen to lead this department. And I feel like we have great things coming. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So we have in economic development, we have some focus areas. We have our business retention and recruitment, workforce development, housing. We're going to be adding in the next fiscal year redevelopment as a focus area. And then also we've focused a little bit in the past 6 months on the state and getting more attention in Santa Fe. Starting with business retention and expansion, when I moved to economic development as a coordinator, I was asked to start our BRE program. So this is basically where you go to a business and you ask, you just sit down with them and see how they're doing, see how we can assist them, whether they need job training, any kind of incentives if they're looking to grow, if they financial assistance, anything they may need, we sit down, we talk to them. We don't have a lot of resources in-house, but we have great partners that we work with that we can direct them to. Unfortunately, because of COVID, this program hasn't really taken off like I wanted it to, because we want to do these visits in person instead of doing them virtually. But we did start as a pilot program in our industrial park. We've done it 2 years now, and we've really started to build our relationship out there. Our next focus area is going to be downtown in our manufacturing sector. We also have our partnership programs, which you are all familiar with, which is the BizSprint and the social media program. And even though it has been a pandemic, we have seen some expansions for local businesses. Saputo added 150 jobs and with a $30 million investment. Electronic Caregiver just recently announced 120 new jobs, and they have a potential other expansion coming. And then Lazen's building a new facility for $8.5 million. So business recruitment, I want to start with the focus at the industrial park. Economic development has done a really great job focusing on the industrial park the past few years. Of course, we've adopted our master plan and the overlay zone. One of the big focus areas right now is the certified sites. If we can get some of our sites, some of our parcels certified at the industrial park, that will really help us in recruiting business, because that just shows that we're ready for business, that we're ready to bring businesses in like right now. We're also working with community development on a fast track permit program so that we can get the permitting process going faster to keep on the timeline that the business may have when they come here. Just a little bit about the future of our industrial park. We do have 3 focus areas: our aerospace, aviation and defense, manufacturing, warehousing and distribution, and then value-added agriculture. And I just want to take a moment too. We've been working really close with Mr. Hume at the airport, and we want to make sure that we're all moving forward together. And so the focus of the airport is very important to us. We want to try to add a focus area for UAS industry. We feel like that's going to be really important for us in the future. And of course, everybody knows about the potential runway expansion and then the commercial terminal. So, I forgot to switch slides. So there's the airport, yeah. So the incentives that we provide for recruitment, we have 3 main ones. The Local Economic Development Act, which is a state and local level, it's discretionary. So we get to choose, and so does the state on the amount, and it is reimbursed. So they have to meet benchmarks in order to get their money based on jobs, investment, and investment. The state has the Job Training Incentive Program, JTIP, which is a reimbursed after proof of training. And then to complement that, we have our Wage Plus program, which offers $1,500 per JTIP eligible job that is 10% over the county median wage. The county median wage right now is a little over $35,000. And an example of recruitment, we recently announced the article cold storage, which I have known for the past year as Project Drought. A lot of businesses, when they're looking at us, they don't want to actually tell us their name. So I've actually struggled calling them Artico because they've been drought to me for so long. But they're going to be building a facility at the industrial park, 120,000 square feet, $30 million investment with 60 jobs with an average wage of about 42,000. The incentives that have been offered to them, the state's putting in 600,000. We have 281,000. We're estimating about 84,000 in wage plus. And then we're also going to be doing an industrial revenue bond for them. And then here's just a picture of their beautiful facility. So it's going to be nice to see that out at our industrial park. Over the next 6 months also, I'm working with my team on updating some of our incentives. We want to do wage plus, so it's a tiered amount of how much you get. The state offers that right now. They have the high wage job tax credit. So any job over $600,000, they give more of a reimbursement. So we want to do something similar with wage plus, so that if you're offering the higher paying jobs, you get more of a reimbursement. We're looking at starting what we have dubbed so far as Ready Las Cruces. So this is going to be a local version of the JTIP program, and it's for small business expansion. It's a partnership with DACC. So we can get, it's still very much up in the air, but we're looking at 5 to 10 new jobs if they need training, working with DACC and getting them the training they need. Francisco's leading that effort. And then LEDA, I believe it was last legislative session, they changed the LEDA statute to allow for retail. Now, I haven't really been promoting this because using retail for LEDA is a little, it's a scary door to open, but there is opportunity to give smaller amounts of LEDA for retail, small retail, local businesses. So we're going to be updating our LEDA plan, and we're going to try to set the parameters that are very specific for what we're looking for. So this is kind of what me and my team's looking at right now for updating incentives to put us more competitive and helping our local businesses. We're hoping to get the new incentives to the EDPRC, Economic Development PRC, in the spring, and wage plus and LEDA are state statutes. So our ordinances. So we're gonna hopefully get that to City Council for adoption in July and August. So moving on to workforce development, Francisco would normally be here, but we have been working on also building our relationship with the border. And last week we were offered an opportunity to go to Chihuahua and tour the aerospace industry. And since I was lucky enough to spend the last 2 days with you wonderful people, Francisco and Davin went, and so that's where they are yesterday and today. So I'm filling in for him on his workforce development. We have been only doing workforce development for about a year, and so, but we've come a long way. We have quarterly job fairs, and our last event had 60 employers and over 180 job seekers. Our next event is going to be on February 10th, and I do have flyers for this if anybody would like any. Opportunity Las Cruces is a program that we're collaborating with DACC. So they are actually skills classes to help the workforce prepare for jobs. And then we do business workshops, like we had one last night with the Department of Workforce Solutions, and talking about various parts of workforce. In addition, we serve as the link between new and existing companies and DACC's workforce development and career readiness, as well as NMSU's Office of Experiential Learning, which is creating pathways from students and alumni to get a job. And we are also doing financial literacy classes in both English and Spanish. Our next cohort starts in March. And then, as you know, we do jobs of the week, and this is helping bring awareness to what jobs are out there. And we do this at the city council and work sessions, city council meetings and work sessions. And with that, I will turn it over to Natalie to talk about housing.
Good morning, everyone. Natalie. I'm going to cover our particular section, housing and neighborhood services. I've included a couple slides for the new counselors. Our sole purpose is to address the needs of low and moderate income people in our community. When we talk about economic development, we also need to talk about equity and social justice. So our purpose is to address housing, food insecurity, poverty, health, economic well-being. We want to provide a full continuum of community services, and housing is a big component, but it's not the only thing we do. Our primary purpose, or what we spend most of our time on, is administration of grants, particularly CDBG and home. As part of that, it allows us to partner with many other departments. We're very excited that our home rehab team is partnering with utilities on their sewer connections. We have a number of CDBG infrastructure projects. We're finishing up McPhee Street, Public Works. We'll be starting Paso de Peregrinos. We also have the ability to partner with a number of our NGOs all across the city to provide those services. And then, of course, we have our housing development, which is, I like to say we do that in our spare time, but we want to gear up that piece of our section. I did want to cover sort of the market analysis and what's happening and why we want to focus on housing. This is pre and post COVID. If you look at your active listings, it's really a supply and demand issue where we have half the number of listings. The median sold price has gone up $70,000. And so what this tells me is that where home ownership was feasible, or where people were on the buffer of home ownership, that line just moved that much farther away from them. So we have a number of people who are going to stay renters for a longer time. We absolutely know that home ownership is wealth building. If you notice the difference between the median incomes of our renters and our homeowners, our renters are only making on average $22,000 a month, and their largest expense, monthly expense, is their housing costs. And we do know that we have a 5,600 unit shortage. That's our primary focus for focusing on rental development. We will still do single family development, but it's not going to be this thing. Based on our current studies, the average family that was maybe housing ready now needs over $100,000 in subsidies just to own a home. Our big project for the year, of course, is the Horse and Hound redevelopment for the food bank. That facility we're very excited to partner with Public Works on. They provide almost 3.9 million meals per year to well over 30,000 residents in both the city and the county. In terms of projects, I'm going to go through them really quickly. They're mostly pictures. But Paseos Verdes, of course, is our biggest one. It's in the Paseo South Solano area. It's a redevelopment project of an entire city block. Ooh. And as I go through these projects, I don't want you to think of them as housing projects, right? They're really city projects. They touch every single department. Utilities, public works, community development, economic development. So we want these to be epicenters for change and growth. And I think David said it best, right? Synergies. So as we look at capital investment, parks, roads, we can start in these areas. Most of these developments are near parks that are on your list for investment. So this will have 3 different phases. First phase will initially be senior housing, but it's intended to be workforce housing. But we have to transition these people over to the vacant parcel before we can finish out the rest of the development. And then it'll be senior housing closest to the Munson Center, and then family housing closest to your single family in the park. Desert Hope, I won't cover since I covered this last week, but again, we had the land donation of the 3 surrounding parcels, and so we're evaluating workforce and family housing in this area. And this will also help our permanent supportive individuals transition out of their SROs into maybe 1 or 2 bedrooms. The Amador Mixed Corridor is intended to be permanent supportive housing. It's part of a larger piece, a domino piece. As Paso de Peregrinos moves out of this building, Community Hope can expand, and then we have potential expansion for both housing and some other projects or complementary services. And then I did make sure to show the Incubator Kitchen, since there was support for that yesterday. 3 Sister Departments Council has already invested funding in this. We'll find out in April if this is funded at the state level. If it's not funded at the state level, we may look at some alternative financing models. In terms, Amador Proximal crosstown stations. This is a new one that we're working on. It's 72 units. It's on the other side of the Brewers Oil parcel on the Calcott and Hainer. Peachtree Canyon, this is in the East Mesa off Peachtree Hills. So this would be Councilor Karan's district. It has a lot of green space, some parks. It's in the Metro Weather, the PUD, and it's 126 units, and it's for households with children. South El Paseo and Farney is Councilor Stevie's district. It's a senior affordable housing complex. This is the next one we'll be bringing to you for investment. We'll want approximately $3 million and fee waivers. And it's near El Paso, Las Cruces High School and Springer Park. Sierra, it's a single family. It's right off Spruce. We've been working on this. I think staff will be very happy to celebrate when we finally break down on this one. It's been a labor of love for 10 years. Oak Street Renovations. Even we have affordable housing stock, we want to make sure it stays affordable and that it stays in the housing market for our clients. So this needs a bit of a spruce up. It's specifically for veterans who are experiencing homelessness. So we'll be working on that. It already has funding dedicated, but I just wanted to show it to you guys. Skylark, this is a single family project in partnership with our Parks and Rec department. There was a request for a park on the East Mesa near the Mesa Grande area. So staff is working with them to include a single family development and a park. And so you'll be seeing the purchase of this land coming soon. Staff is very ambitious, and you guys asked me to dream big. So we are asking over the next 5 years a commitment of about $25 million, and that would generate 722 units and approximately $165 million in outside investment for the city. So I just wanted to show that we have a whole host of projects that address not only homelessness, but family, seniors, workforce, and so we're planning ahead. And then I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to finish up. Thank you, Natalie.
All right, thank you, Natalie. And to build on what she just talked about, as I said, we're going to be adding a different focus area to economic development in next fiscal year, and that's redevelopment. So what I'd like to do is take the focus that we've put on the industrial park for the last 2 or 3 years and refocus and to the core of our city. And to do that, we have to do a lot of planning. That slide that had the industrial park, that had, the master plan, the overlay district, all those items. I want to do that. I want to get all the pieces in place so that we can redevelop the core of our city. And that starts with the metropolitan redevelopment area with the ad hoc committee for the Solano and El Paseo, and then Picacho. So redevelop an MRA, you have to be able to establish blight in order to establish the MRA. So what we're going to be doing is, instead of just doing different blight studies in those specific areas, we're going to be doing a blight study through the entire city, or at least the core. So not only are we killing 2 birds with 1 stone by getting the 2 main areas, but we might find that there are more blighted areas that we need to be focusing on that we don't realize. So the one thing that with an MRA though, is that there's no funding mechanism. It's not like a TID where you have money. So part of the reason why our downtown works so well is because we have a TID overlapping an MRA. So we have been meeting with other municipalities. Albuquerque has like 11 or 12 MRAs. And one of the things they do is they have their geo bond as a funding source. So they ask for a few million every geo bond cycle, and that's specifically for MRAs. So that's going to be something else we're going to have to figure out how to tackle. We can put the plans in place, but where's the funding going to come from to actually get some of these projects in place? So that's kind of where we're going with redevelopment. We have asked for the funds to do this big study in next fiscal year. along with that, the incentive changes, looking at LIDA on a smaller scale, and then the Ready Las Cruces is going to really help these smaller businesses either get off the ground or grow. And also, I'd like to look at updating our infill policy. It hasn't been updated in a while. And I'd like to see if there's a way that we can kind of make our infill area more attractive and get people to want to develop there. And then finally, we have been focusing on the state. Believe it or not, we are the second largest city in the state. Santa Fe, I feel like sometimes forgets that. So I sometimes feel like I'm screaming from a mountaintop, but between me and Davin, they're probably sick of us at this point. But so the Economic Development was given the opportunity to present at the Legislative Economic Development and Policy Interim Committee, and that was in August or September. This committee is chaired by Senator Hamlin. So we were able to give an overview of what we have going on and why some state statutes are hindering our development in the state in Las Cruces. I also went up with a group to meet with Secretary Keyes and to talk about the airport expansions. Andy and I have become kind of a team in this effort, and we've dubbed it the big ask. And so I've been working with him on getting those funds for the airport that we need. And then as I mentioned, the state statute changes. There's two different ones right now that we're focusing on: the municipal land sales, which I'll go over briefly in my next slide. And then I found out with meeting with Albuquerque last week that they want to go to the state and ask for changes in the MRA statute to add a funding mechanism to make it easier to redevelop. So we're planning next year we're hoping to build on that and then get other entities involved to see if there's other things we might be missing so that we can go to the state as one big entity and say we need these changes. And then this is just a slide I presented to the interim committee, the legislative committee. So I just want to give you an example why municipal land sales is hindering our growth. So the way that the state statutes are written is that any sale over $25,000 requires an appraisal and passed by ordinance. So $25,000 isn't a lot. So just looking at our timeline for the city of Las Cruces, we generally have to have all the information in about 4 weeks before first read. There's 2 weeks between first read and adoption. And then they have this referendum period in the state statute of 45 days. So even if it passes for 45 days, the business can't put a shovel in the ground. So it takes almost 3 months to get a land sale done with municipally owned land. Now, looking at the private sector and trying to sell land at the private sector, that's not even competitive. And if you're looking at other states, surrounding states that we compete with, that's not competitive either. So this is just an example of what we want to go to the state with and explain why we need these changes, because we're going to be losing deals just because of this. So far, we've found ways, we started working with community development earlier in the process so that these 45 days and these 87 days don't seem as long, but it's going to happen sooner or later when they're going to be like, that's too long. That doesn't work for us. So with that is a brief overview of economic development. I did it. There were concerns because we had too many slides. So Abby and I can see other questions now.
Yeah.
I always wait for someone else to go first. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. This was excellent. My brain is on fire already. I really appreciate you both and everything you're doing. Couple questions. From the beginning of the presentation, some of the incredible workshops that you're having, I wonder if there's room for wage theft. I've been really concerned about this as a growing problem throughout the pandemic, and we've seen some unfortunate news stories out of Las Cruces, and anecdotally I hear things, right? But I just wonder if it's a bigger issue than we realize, and how can we give workers resources to know how to advocate for themselves, given that I don't think at the local level we have anything, right? But there are resources at the state level. So is that something that you think would be in your toolbox?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Bencomo. So we did have a great workshop last night. And they did talk about the state has so many more resources than we realize. And I think one of the biggest things is that we're not getting that information out there. So I 100% think we can work with them and find a specific workshop or figure out how to get that information out to see how we can help you.
Absolutely, even if it is as an information hub, and honestly, this year there'll be paid sick leave legislation that goes into effect. I think it's gonna be huge for us to be able to provide information to workers. And then I know at the, I've been asking for LIDA and cannabis, and then at the cannabis workshop a couple weeks ago, you all announced that there was that option. Is that we're completely making that public and known to everyone?
So thank you again, Councilor Bencomo. I'm not 100% ready to commit to that answer,
Okay.
but we are getting closer. There's a lot of information about LIDA behind the scenes, and like you have to put a security for the LIDA amount, and the security is generally a line of credit. And so for cannabis industry, you can't. That's not as easy. So there's quite a few kinks that we're still working out, but the state has, okay, I've heard, I don't want to commit them to anything. We've been in discussions. I've been in discussions with 3 different potential businesses. We just got to make sure all of our ducks are in a row to make it happen.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. And then just a couple last questions for you and then have some for Natalie. I didn't hear you mention outdoor rec, which I just think is such a huge opportunity, given that we are the second largest city, that we have an incredible national monument, right? For that to be part of, how we're talking about economic development.
Yeah, so we're working on a project right now, a potential project that is outdoor rec related. And so it's been really quiet. And so that's kind of why I didn't really mention it up to this point. But we're hoping if we were to land this project, it opens the door for other outdoor rec businesses to realize that this is a perfect place for them to be as well. But we have started working with Visit Las Cruces on how to pair their tourism efforts with what we want to do, and working with expanding, working with the local outdoor rec businesses to figure out, where we're missing in the supply chain. So there are behind the scenes efforts going on.
Okay, cool, thank you. And then just lastly on the MRA advocacy to the state to put MRA changes, let us know what we can do. I mean, I feel like we could definitely have some state rep champions in southern New Mexico that could also advocate for this, because I think it's huge. So just, keep us posted on how we can support those efforts.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Natalie, my only question for you was on the Three Sisters, what would be reasons the state would not fund?
Councilor Bencomo, that is part of a 9% competitive tax credit. So they're in competition with developments. I think there's 15 other developments across the state. And so for a very long time, the city has chosen not to be competitive in those. So this is one of the, Desert Hope was the first in several years, and then now this is the next one. So we'll find out in April if they're successful. If not, again, we can look at non-competitive funding structures. There's less for the total development cost, so they get financed a little bit different. I promised I was going to do a plug for the grant office, because I heard Sylvia's presentation yesterday. And if we are going to capitalize to fund these and other projects, I think we need to consider federal compliance person and additional support for grants. I promised I was going to squeeze that in for the other cooler grants office, but don't tell anything.
Thank you, Natalie. And then actually last thing, do you want to touch also on the Affordable House State Trust Fund and just sort of what you've heard about that? Thank you.
So SB 19 has a hearing today at 1:30. I'm going to attend that. My understanding is that as part of the windfall of money that the state has, they're considering a $70 million investment into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So we want to make sure that we have as many of these projects in the pipeline so our developers can go after that funding. And so that's one of the reasons we're preparing a number of projects. And then we're also aware that the federal bill, there's some other federal bills that are setting aside funding specifically for affordable housing. And there's some that are trying to make housing infrastructure and have infrastructure include housing as a definition. So we just want to be ready.
Thank you.
One more question, we trying to stay on our, I have another speaker at 9:30, so one more question, Councilor Street?
No, Becky.
Oh, Becky, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, man.
Well, just to keep us on track, I will just quickly add my voice to Councilor Bencomo's on support of workers' rights and empowerment. And along the lines of cannabis, one of the things that I'd like to see us be a little more forward-facing are the zoning regulations that are going to affect micro businesses, small businesses, home businesses, and thanks to Catherine, who has already been very helpful with to me personally on this, but especially in these PUD zones where it's kind of a question mark. The sooner we can get some clarity on that, I think the better.
So I apologize, but if you have other questions, I'm gonna make sure that Elizabeth and Natalie do not leave. So that way, after the retreat, we can still keep going after the retreat. So
We already
great
covered
discussion.
2 hour break, so.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I'm committed on that for the rest of the day. Francisco gets to have fun.
Okay, let me check. Our next speaker is on Zoom. Eric, are you there? He is.
I am here.
Thank you. Let me bring up your presentation, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you.
While I'm bringing up Eric Harrigan's presentation, let me introduce Eric. Works very closely with the Finance and Treasury Department. He works for the RBC, which is the Royal Bank of Canada. And he helps us with with all of our debt. And so I've asked him to give you an overview of our debt and the capacity analysis. So Eric, I have your presentation, so I'll forward it for you. And hopefully I can meet your needs. So, but if you need for me to forward it for you, just shout out, okay?
Great, will do. Good morning, everyone. Happy to talk with you this morning. I'm going to plan to walk through all of the various cities' debt programs at a pretty high level, talk about the capacity under those programs, and then certainly want to provide enough time for questions. And so if we could go through, if you could advance a couple of slides. So the city's sort of largest cycling program is its state shared cycling program. This program is used for citywide capital projects. And bonds are typically issued every 3 years. Historically, the city has issued approximately, $10 to $11 million under that program. With the difference in 2020, the city issued only 9.1 million. And that was done due to the uncertainty at that time because of the pandemic. The bonds were issued and structured to allow for about $1 million in annual debt service relief through 2023. In 2023, the city can issue additional state share gross receipts tax bonds in the amount of 12 million. And then 12 million basically every 3 years thereafter. This would take the annual debt service back to what the city has historically seen on its cycling program to about $5.9 million every year. The finance plan does provide a little bit of flexibility to issue before 2023 if needed, to take that debt service back to its historical level. The other program the city has is the first municipal gross receipts tax. This is a cycling program for street maintenance projects. The program is designed to issue debt every 3 years. with net proceeds of approximately 5 million. And again, the projection is 5 million every 3 years. You can see with the debt service declines to allow for future debt to be layered in. The fifth 0.25% municipal gross receipts tax cycling program is for flood control projects, similar to the first municipal gross receipts tax program, designed to generate 3.5 million in net proceeds to the city every 3 years. Next slide, please. The city also has hold harmless gross receipts tax bonds outstanding. It's not really an every 3-year program. The first bonds were issued in 2015 for various public improvements. A portion of that was sold as taxable to fund economic development projects. And then in 2018, there was a second series issued to finance the pool enclosure. Next slide. The city also has utility bonds that are outstanding. These are typically issued in conjunction with the state share gross receipts tax, so as or the first quarter municipal gross receipts tax. So as street improvements are done, the utility has historically issued debt or done capital projects to rehab the utility infrastructure in conjunction with those projects. The utility has also entered into a couple of financings for energy performance contracts, such as electronic meter reading, and those savings that are obtained from those projects are used to pay the annual debt service, and those are issued on the subordinate lien. Next section on the general obligation bonds. So in 2018, the city asked voters to authorize 35.6 million in GO bonds, I believe, over 3 questions. Voters did authorize and voted for all of those projects. The city issued its first GO bond in 2019 in the amount of 18 million, with the second series issued in 2020 in the amount of 17.6 million. And so currently, the city has issued all of the bonds that the voters authorized. The tax rate associated with those bonds has been very level at 2.06 over the last 4 years. And the bond program allows for the city to go back to voters every 4 years for additional new money authorization. So based upon the city's growth in its tax base, the city can go back to voters in 2022 in the amount of 23 million to maintain the current tax rate of $2.06. We also ran a couple of options to generate $27 million every 4 years in perpetuity. The debt service tax rate would need to go to approximately $2.45. This would be a 39-cent mill levy increase. To get an idea of what that impact would be on $100,000 of property value, that would be about $13 per year, or just a little over $1 a month. We also looked at maintaining a $35 million election sizes for 2022 and into the future. And that would require a tax rate of approximately 3 mills in total, or about a 94-cent increase. That increase would result in approximately $31 per year per 100,000 of market value. On page 11, we've provided a chart that sort of shows a kind of a graphical depiction of how the GO bonds get layered in to maintain the tax rate. This is the first option that I mentioned, which is $23 million elections. It would be sold in 2 series of bonds over a 4-year period. And then in 2026, the city could go back to voters for additional 23 million and maintain that $2.06 tax rate. So just wanted to provide a kind of a graphical depiction of how that debt gets layered in. On page 12, we have a list of all of the various governmental entities that levy a property tax on homeowners and property within the city of Las Cruces. It's obviously not just the city, the state of New Mexico, the county, the community college, city, and the schools. They all have property taxes that they levy. So for the total tax rate for a property within the city of Las Cruces is a little over $31 or 31 mils. Just for the city of Las Cruces, the city of Las Cruces portion of that is $8.77, of which $2.03 is for the general obligation bonds. Next slide. Looking back at the city's assessed value, the city's assessed value has had growth of about 3.5% over the last 5 years. Looking back over the last 10 years, it's been a little bit closer to 2.8%. This is, the city's tax base is an important component because it drives the total capacity that the city has, as well as how quickly the city can retire its debt. The faster that the city's tax base grows, the faster it's able to retire its debt. Next slide, please. We have just a couple of slides on the market. I want to just kind of cover this at a pretty high level and then turn it over to questions. As I think you all know, Congress last year did pass, and it was signed into law by President Biden, the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, which included $550 billion of new spending. Most of that went towards roads and bridges, as well as power upgrades, rail, and there was a healthy chunk in there for broadband expansion, clean drinking water, and transit. There is currently being debated in Congress the Build Back Better bill. This originally started out at around $3 trillion, and it has been modified and changed over the last several months. And there's still question as what's the size and scope of this that will actually pass Congress and be signed into law. But that is for our folks in Washington to figure that out. Kind of going over next slide, please. Kind of going over the kind of major themes of what's going in the market right now. We have seen some pretty high inflationary numbers come out right now. We're on track for about a 7% rate of inflation annualized. When looking back, that's the highest, that's the highest rate that we've seen in nearly 39 years. And so that puts the Federal Reserve in kind of a tough position. Over the last 18 months, the Federal Reserve has been in a pretty accommodative position, taking these short-term interest rates to near zero, purchasing U.S. Treasuries to keep rates down. But because where we are, looking at inflation, the Federal Reserve is now in a position where it has to start acting to combat that inflation and sort of slowing the U.S. economy down, if you will. And so the Federal Reserve met earlier this week. They did put on the table that they will consider, raising the overnight lending rate every time they meet. The first time that is expected to happen is probably this March. At the beginning of December, the consensus is that the Federal Reserve was going to raise rates probably 3 times this year. That probability has now risen to about 4 times this year, with their goal of trying to get inflation under control. Next slide. So looking back over the last year, it has been quite volatile where interest rates have been. Interest rates spiked in February, reduced, kind of reduced down in July to sort of the low of the year, and then most recently has risen. Again, a lot of this has to do with the actions that the Fed has done, as well as what the concern about where inflation is and where rates are going. But if you actually look at where rates are compared to where they have been over the last 10 years, interest rates are still very, very low and close to their pre-pandemic lows. When you take into consideration where rates have been. And with that, I think that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to turn it over and to any questions on any of the material that I covered.
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm going to give it a shot.
Actually, Mayor Pro Tem, I was going to announce at the end of the retreat that what we're going to do is upload all of the slides on a special place in SharePoint and share that with everyone. So that way you'll have access to all of them.
Very good. Okay, thank you. I also, when we bond so I'm going to do this very from my head. So every 3 years we bond. The last time we bonded, we only bonded for $9 million, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And we can only go back after 3 years, or do we have an opportunity between now and 2023 to bond for the rest of those 2 million? Because you said we can only go up to 11 million or 12 million.
So currently the way that the program is set up is that the city could go a little earlier to issue additional bonds, taking that annual debt service back to the 5.9 million level. Right now, the finance plan contemplates issuing 12 million in the 2023 calendar year, but the city does have the flexibility, should it have the need, to advance, to issue those bonds earlier, because that drop in debt service that was done when the 9 million was issued.
Okay, and so can that be only for street utility?
Because of the state share gross receipts tax, it has a very broad use. Those funds can be used for for a lot of various types of projects, just not streets.
Okay, thank you. And then the GEO bond, when we go back and hopefully the voters approve, how much has our debt been decreased at that point? Does that make sense?
Actually, Eric, that probably would be a question for me. Eric and I would need to probably look and see how much we've paid on that debt.
Okay.
I need to look at the debt schedule and see what it's at. Eric may not have that number like handy with him, but we can get that number to you.
I want to say that when he came last time, I believe he suggested an amount, but I don't recall it. I just want to know what that is. And when folks ask me, because we did have a conversation, housing policy review committee, I believe Johanna, yes, Councilor Bingo and I and Lotus, and we were asked. So I just want to make sure that I know what that is.
So Eric, do you know offhand what that is, that number?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, so right now the city can go back to voters for in the amount of 23 million and continue to maintain the existing tax rate. Currently, the city has paid, and I've got that number here. The city has, I show that the city has paid down approximately 13,090,000 of the 2018 election bonds.
Any other questions for Eric? Oh, Counselor Stubbe. Okay, thank you.
And this might be for you as well, but for a city of our size, are we holding an appropriate amount debt? You know, it seems like a lot, but at the same time, I just wonder what type of ranges historically, what has been the kind of plan on that debt payment?
Eric, did you hear the question?
Sort of. It kind of came in and out, so my apologies. Was the question, you know, related to his sort of?
There's two. So first question is, are we holding an appropriate amount of debt for a city of our size? And then the second question is, historically, what has been kind of the payment plan on that debt? Are we trying to be aggressive about paying it down? Are we moderate with that sort of approach?
I did hear that. So yes, so the city actually has what I would consider a very strong repayment structure. The city's debt declines very rapidly every 3 years on its gross receipts tax debt, which allows the city to either issue additional bonds in the future for capital projects, or it gives the city the flexibility to not issue those bonds and recapture that recapture that revenue if it so chose. You know, from a general obligation bond standpoint, those bonds are paid from property tax revenues. You know, I would say that the city's tax rate is probably close to average in terms of the GO bond tax rate. To give you an example, the city of Albuquerque's GO bond tax rate is $4.95. So, you know, almost 3 times what the city's current is, but they have a much larger GO bond program. The city of Rio Ranchos, their GO bond tax rate is about $2.75. And so it does kind of vary from city to city, but I would say for those cities that that do have GO bond outstanding, the city is roughly average, maybe a little bit lower than average from a GO bond tax rate.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions for Eric? Okay, seeing none. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. I will let the counselors know that I've been talking with Eric on the possibility of him coming down and doing a bigger presentation. He has a great presentation. I call it Debt 101.
Yes.
It helps me as well. So he's a great asset to our finance team. So thank you so much, Eric, for taking time out to be here with us.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
We have to follow the schedule. So at this time, as you can see, they're heading this way. I've invited Delilah and Adrian to come in and talk to the counselors and the mayor about the energy transition and utilities. Let me bring up here.
This has been, it's not real loud, so I apologize.
I'm real loud. Okay, me too. So is this the one? This is,
Yeah.
this one, Delilah. Okay. You know, there's a news, a gal on the, yeah, the gal on the radio, Delilah. Okay.
And then how do I do next slide?
It's that.
Okay.
It should work.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your time. Delilah Walsh, I'm the Utilities Director, and I have with me today Adrian Whitmer, who's our Assistant Director. So we're going to focus mostly on our decarbonization and energy transition efforts in the utility. Just before we get started, I'd like to remind you all that the utilities, joint utility is an enterprise fund. So we don't take any money from general fund. We are not funded by taxpayer dollars, we're funded by ratepayer dollars. So whatever you use for your services for, you pay your utility bills, that's our funding. And as a matter of fact, we send about $9 million to the city, and that's through engineering services, administrative services, franchise fees, and everything else we do to contribute to the city. So we actually contribute to the funds rather than taking from it. So that's just my plug and reminder. I'm not asking you for money. Yeah. Yes. So the first few slides I'm going to go through really quickly, and just so, especially for our new counselors, to give you a background of where we are. What's happened just in the last 2 years is all that I'm highlighting here. We started out with what we call the Cabinets report, and that was something that was sponsored through the Sustainability Office to look at energy transition for the Las Cruces community as a whole. And in that report, they outlined options such as establishing municipal energy utility rather than EPE, establishing our own electric cooperative, or simply pursuing enabling legislation to encourage development. And community solar is one of those items that came out of it. In addition to that, the Cabinets report conducted an analysis of all the steps, cost, timeline, and even legal feasibility of the regulatory tools we would need to pursue these options. That was one. Next, we had in October of 2020 our climate action plan. And what that did was gather the city's GHG emissions inventory. In the peer group, City of Las Cruces was by far the lowest emitter of greenhouse gas in communities of our size and in the Southwest. So I think ours was like 22 tons per year. The next person next to us was 45, and then it went up from there. So already before we even started, we are considered a low emissions community. So that's a good thing. In that climate action plan, it outlined strategies for reducing emissions even more in our community. And that included things like waste reduction, building efficiencies, renewable energy, and decarbonization. And I only listed the things that impact the utility. There's other stuff in there. With those strategies, one was incentivizing waste minimization. The way the utility has already contributed to that is we actually have our green waste program at the Foothills landfill, where we take in green waste, mulch it up, and then redistribute it for free back into the community. In addition to that, it gives our commercial landscapers an opportunity to take that green waste to Foothills rather than out to Corralitos, and thus filling the landfill. And we also formed a new partnership with South Central Solid Waste for an East Mesa transfer station in order to reduce the times that we're driving from East Mesa to Amador and onto Corralitos. That is still in the works. We've also I'm gonna have to take my mask off because my glasses fog. I'm sorry. We're also supporting the recycling effort. Something that I shared with Councilor Stubbe and Vincomo recently, and it's in my report with Evo when I meet with him again, is Waste Connections has purchased Southwest Disposal, Mesilla Valley Disposal, another small disposal company, I can't remember, the Sunland Park landfill, and now they've purchased Freeman Recycling just a few weeks ago. And so what that means is we now have a monopoly in our community outside of the utility. And so what we need to do is figure out how that recycling partnership is best going to continue to benefit us and our users. Additionally, we added a food waste franchise option in the new solid waste ordinance. So if we have a vendor who would like to pursue food waste,
and disposal and processing, that's now an option in our ordinance. It was not before our new ordinance update. On energy strategies, we are, in order to expand residential energy efficiency, we are proposing a decarbonization rider in our latest gas rate review, which you'll get in our work session. And what that means is we actually use a rate rider to form a energy efficiency program. And the reason is when you talk about costs of energy, I don't care if it's solar, natural gas, nuclear, it's going to cost the same because it's all a market-driven situation. So whatever the market needs, whatever the market demands, that's what the price is going to be. It doesn't matter the source of energy. So when you want to look at savings and helping out our consumers, you have to look at decreasing consumption. Efficiency is the answer to helping the economics of that. So we'll have a rate rider in place to do that. We've already partnered with El Paso Electric for their energy efficiency program. Joe Provencio is actually working with them now on a small pilot that we can do even before we have funds from the decarbonization rider. And what that does is go into a low-income area, identify with an energy audit where efficiencies can be found, and then we work in partnership with EPE to either upgrade appliances, seal the envelope of the building, making that house more efficient, and thus driving down power consumption and power costs for that low-income program. So that's something we're already pursuing, and we'll be starting our pilot very soon here. The other strategy was reducing usage in buildings and then decarbonizing energy. So we already started doing this. We've got our power purchase agreements. We've got the rate rider. We already have a cogeneration unit at Jacob Hans, meaning we use the methane produced in our clarifiers with waste processing, and we blend it with natural gas, and that's what powers the plants. We're looking at introducing more of those engines in our program. The EOP Energy Efficiency Program, I meant to say ETE, so if you'll ignore that typo. Renewable energy, we're very excited. We'll be announcing that soon to the public. We have a new partnership with NMSU, and this is with their energy program, electric utility program. So this same team and program out at NMSU are the ones that did all the research for Aggie Power and made those recommendations. And so our new partnership, they are for us identifying community solar locations, the capabilities of clean and renewable energy options at the utility, and then even identifying suitable locations for EV charges to meet our fleet needs. We'll be wrapping in the city as a consideration, but of course, being the utility director and the fact that I'm taking money from you, I'm going to take care of my fleet first, but we will include the rest of the city. We are a department. So our reduction goals of all the efforts we've already done with our AMI projects, with the efforts with power purchase agreements, we've already reduced our own emissions by 12% just in the last 2 years. And so the goal was 19% by 2030, and we've already hit 12 in 2 years. So we know we're going to hit the 2030 goal of the CAP. The big one is the energy transition plan. So that was resolution 21-153. It supports the CAP actions, and the meat of the energy transition plan, it directs the city to establish a 30-year energy transition and roadmap with milestones to outline our path to non-fossil fuel energy, implementation of good efficiency programs, and decarbonation of the system. So this is what I would call an unfunded mandate, because this was a mandate that was settled by city council, but sent down to the utility to take care of with no funding for it whatsoever. And so I can't just sign a new contract and get that going, because this cost goes back to the ratepayers. Since this mandate was sent by the council with no funding, that means your ratepayers and people who actually pay for gas, water, wastewater, and solid waste have to pay for this plan. And so our goal, and we've figured it out, how to do that without impacting our rate pays. What I want to point out is natural gas is not going to go away completely. That's our goal as a community, as a global goal, and our climate action goals. It very much is, but it's not going to go away completely tomorrow. These are things that we have to work on long-term strategies. So the challenges, what's nice about 153 is it actually identified some of the challenges. We need to retire debt of the system, while we also recognize that we still have to improve the system, maintain the system, and repair the system as it exists today. We still have not only regulatory mandates, but our own safety mandates when it comes to a natural gas system. In addition to that, we have to continue to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, because even if we transitioned, let's say, to full electrification, but our EP is not using renewables, you're just burning twice as much natural gas to produce the electricity that you would get if you use your flame. So that's not an ideal situation. You don't want to electrify just to say you're electrified. You want to electrify to take advantage of renewables. And that's what our climate action plan says. And it also has, in 153, we're challenged to consider and calculate the cost to the community. The reason being, if you are going to neglect an infrastructure, or you're going to make decisions that cause us more cost impacts to maintain the infrastructure, the people who are left on that infrastructure are the ones that are going to have to pay. We saw this in California, and it's actually called out in this resolution. We don't want to see cost shifting to our lower income communities. There was one community in California that it started, I believe, a lawsuit, and I haven't tracked it lately. But what happened was, by saying no more natural gas, we're not going to do this anymore, the poorer parts of town ended up paying higher rates because of that decision. So it wasn't a well-planned transition, whereas ours is calling for a plan first. That will not affect the cost to our community. So in 53, it asks us to use smart innovation and modernization of our infrastructure. It asks us to continue to maintain a safe system. Because if you told us make a transition, but then abandon your old system, we're going to have a terrible accident. It asks us to use renewable energy and pursue systems to lower GHG, such as a hydrogen plant, which is a possibility, and MSU is looking at that right now. We're hoping to partner with them. Invest in energy efficiency programs and ensure affordability and access. And I really appreciate that one. It was in the resolution because I heard that 6 times from council. You watch affordability, you take care of our people. So our LCU board, after resolution 153, also came with us with more challenges and consideration, saying, we want you to hire a nationally and experienced consultant. It can't be an engineering firm that's just local and they're going to do some research and learn as they build this plan. They wanted somebody who did this work before. They told us, again, affordability. They want cost-effective and resilient energy. And what I mean by resilient energy is when we had the Arctic storm in 2011, El Paso Electric went down. They couldn't provide the power needed during that energy surge. Our system did not go down. We provided natural gas. We had some low pressures in the Delaware area that we're going to have to address next year because it happened again during a winter spike. But our system never failed our citizens. They got heat during that storm when EP went down. And they went down through the whole state. During Winter Storm Uri, we saw what happened with ERCOT out in Texas, where all their users went down. We still stayed up on our natural gas system. So that was something that came out of our LCU board, was you still have to be resilient and you still have to protect the people and citizens of our infrastructure. They also asked for outreach workshops for customers to encourage them what the benefits were to go into renewable energy versus natural gas, and that our transition of our team members and sustain community jobs. So in other words, our board, and it was actually Councilor Como said, we can't lose jobs because of this transition. We have to be able to have the either skill training in place or attrition where we're transitioning from natural gas to renewables. Whatever that looks like, it has to be included in that plan. Additionally, we also have to address cost of service, because when we adjust for lost revenue due to conservation and transition, that impacts not only the utility as a joint system, but also the money we send to the city. I'll give you an example here. Water is a great example this year. I had to cut the water budget quite a bit in our budget preps this year because our water revenue, even though our population is going up, is staying flat, which is a good thing. That means water conservation is working. the millions of gallons of leaks we've repaired in the last 8 months, I think it came to 5 million or 6 million of leaks on the customer side that we've repaired. That means the customer's not paying us for that water anymore because they're fixing it on the customer side. So it was revenue water that because we fixed the leaks, we're not getting that revenue again. So it's great when we fix the leaks on our side, because it means we're not pumping that water that's not being charged. But when we help the customers repair their leaks, it means our revenue goes down. And so if you look at even our water conservation plan and what we use gallons per capita per day, we're actually barely blipping in the upward direction, even though our population has shot so much. So our efforts are working, but that also means we get less revenue. So in 153, is that my time?
No,
Oh, thank goodness. I was like, oh dear. Auctioneer mode.
You do have about 4 minutes.
Oh gosh, okay, I'm gonna click past this then. So the transition plan is gonna cost about $400,000. The way we're gonna address it without impacting our ratepayers, since unless you guys want to give me money, I'll take it. We're gonna do this through an investment grade audit contract with Johnson Controls. It'll help us complete the plan, address some of the goals in the climate action strategies, meaning that we're gonna do other work to reduce our energy consumption and reduce our emissions, and then minimize that planned cost and realize the energy savings. So our next steps is to enter into this investment grade audit. We'll be presenting this at our LCU board meeting on February 10th. What we're looking at is we think the investment grade audit and the energy transition plan together will cost about $1.3 million altogether. But what's nice, oh, hey, look, how do I go backwards? There we go. So what's nice though, is the energy savings will pay for all of this. So our ratepayers don't have to pay for it. Our energy savings will pay for it. And then we have a pretty good idea of how to move forward. So I did say end of presentation, but the group we're going to be working with is Guidehouse Consultants. So Guidehouse has done this. We didn't find a national firm, we found a global firm. So they've done energy transition plans for small countries. They've done it for PNF. They've done it for Gas Company of New Mexico. And these are all they did the European Climate Initiative. They did the California Commission's hydrogen introduction. So if we're looking at renewable natural gas, hydrogen production, maybe we can use the infrastructure that we have today for natural gas as a hydrogen delivery or renewable natural gas system. We don't know, but we found a partner that did this all over the world. And so that's.
we have time for a few questions. Councilor Bliss.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you so much, Delilah, for thinking globally and acting locally. Thank you for that very good plan here. Thank you. That's all.
Oh, yay. I have it right here. Oh. Hello, there we go. Thank you, Delilah and Adrian. I tried to talk about the water issue yesterday, but you did obviously a much better job, as I knew you would. I just wanted to talk about Delilah's point on the unfunded mandate. And obviously this is on me. This is a learning that I have to do as a counselor and ask more often, how are we going to pay for this? Because I feel like we've been here with multiple resolutions that we passed, TNR, this one. So that's on me, certainly, as a counselor and a policymaker, but I also just think that that's a really bad practice to get into. And I would love to have some sort of like checklist for all of us, making sure that whatever resolution ordinance we're passing, that we're asking, does this, affect underrepresented communities disproportionately? How are we paying for it? Just because I don't like to be in these situations, and it looks good on paper, but it's not realistic. And I really appreciate Delilah for pointing that out for me and us. That being said, Delilah, what funding options do we have, especially considering the infrastructure bill has, I think, a significant amount of funding in relation to sustainability, and if that's the case, I think this is one of our biggest priorities when it comes to that funding.
Absolutely. So the utility, we're gonna approach it as an IGA. That way we don't have to include it with our rates or cut any other items in our budget in order to pay for it. But absolutely, I like what I heard yesterday about forming an action team to have our plan ready to go for the infrastructure money. There's a ton of money available for sustainability that's actually earmarked in the bill. And we want to be ready for it. We gave EFO like a $45 million sustainability wish list.
Yes.
So we're ready to do it. We've got them in our plans and we're ready to do it. I will tell you, and I appreciate your approach, to make sure that whatever the council dictates is covered by funding. And I will make a commitment to you, whatever questions you have, please let me know, let Adrian know. Unfortunately, I'll never tell you what you want to hear. I'm just going to tell you the truth and the impact of what's going to happen.
Any other?
So there's a lot, I thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much. It was really super helpful. I really appreciate your commitment thinking about this. Really, that's really. I do want to go back to something, and I've heard of this before, but I've recently had a pretty lengthy conversation with some constituents about El Paso Electric, and sort of they showed themselves to be one of the best stewards of the public sort of input and respect for communities that exist. So I think in that conversation, certainly from constituents, they're saying like we resent our dependence on a monopolistic for-profit utility. I saw that you alluded to something that happened in the past, the study that was looking at the of that. I'm just wondering, and maybe everyone already knows this, what happened to that conversation and if it's still something that's on the table.
Our approach is going to be through community solar. So number one, and many councilors may not know this, in ordinance, the utility is already authorized to be an electric utility. We actually used to operate one. And so we sold it off to El Paso Electric, and there's a whole history there, and I could take me an hour to explain it. So number one, we're already authorized to do it. Number two, we're going to pursue that option through community solar, which is why we want MSU to do the siting study, the interconnect study. And part of their scope is not only going to be how do we interconnect to El Paso Electric for distribution, but how can we have our own transmission system if we do build a sufficient community solar site. So we are pursuing it that way.
No others? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thanks, Delilah. Thanks, Adrian. I appreciate it. And of course, they're going to stay around for afterwards too, making everyone stay. So counselors, our next session is our outside agencies. We have 3 agencies that will be here today. We have Clint Thacker from Animal Service Center. We have, hopefully I apologize, Gabe, but it's Sergeant Gabe. Yes, Arandis. Thank you. And from MRTA, we have Hugo Costa. And what we're going to do is we're going to let Hugo go first, and he's going to be covering MRTA. So Hugo, do you have a microphone? Great. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. I don't have budget numbers for you, and the thing is our board will be doing their budget between 2 weeks from now. So we're still working on some numbers. And we're also in the middle of starting our union negotiations, so we don't have exact figures. But what I'd like to do is just give you a little background of where we are now with MRTA and what our priorities are coming into this year's budget. Our budget currently is $4.67 million. Of that, the city of Las Cruces contributes $2.2 million of it, the county $1.9 million, and the other smaller municipalities $300,000. We do get some funding additional from PSA and from some leased properties that we have down from the park tower sites. 2 issues that are really going to impact our budget session this year. One of them is staffing, recruitment, retention, salaries, and the other is infrastructure, security, network security, and general IT security systems. The first one's salaries. One of the impacts that we're going to have that we're seeing is besides union negotiations to compensation is the recent by the city of Las Cruces to start their base salaries at $15 an hour. We're going to have to readdress our salaries. Our starting pay for the telecommunicator trainee is $13.64 an hour. So right after that, not only we're going to be competing with other communication centers, which also start much higher than we do, but now we're competing with every single job that the city of Las Cruces is going to be offering. And we tend to be, we have to be competitive with the city of Las Cruces because we're under the same benefits package, being the fiscal agent on the same benefits package as the Las Cruces employees. But now we're going to have to compete with the minimum $15 an hour wage that the city is offering new hires. The other issue we're going to impact it on is technology. Last year, we received a grant from DFA to do a pilot program. And what we did is it was $30,000 in penetration testing on our internal and external computer systems. We're the only PSAP public safety entry point for 911. The only PSAP in Mexico that's done that. We're got a lot of information out of it. One thing we found is that most of our vulnerabilities are on vendor provided systems, not on our internal system. So because of that, we started an upgrade process. One of the things that we found was very vulnerable, for example, was the logger recorder, which is a recording system that records all the radio traffic, all the 911 calls, all the telephone calls and so forth. The vendor system had open ports and a lot of vulnerabilities in there. And we asked for BFA this year for emergency funding and we received about $200,000 to put in a brand new logger recorder, which will be going on in March. So we've identified a lot of issues. And because of that, we started replacing older servers with new servers that can handle new softwares and to mitigate security vulnerability. I think we've all heard all the attacks that have gone about across the country. We even had one recently at work, and we definitely want to mitigate that. It's too crucial a system for public safety for us to be able to go down or to be hacked. So part of our budget this year, we need a big push to complete some of the changes that we began. We're putting in a new 911 telephone system, which DFA is funding. We also have to put in a new PBX system, which is an internal non-emergency phone system, which is not being funded by DFA. We also switched over email providers to more secure email handling for us. A lot of vulnerabilities, as you know, from email. So technology issues and personnel issues, retention of staff. We are very understaffed at the moment. We're at 60% staffing level from where we should be for the telecommunicator side of it. And then we have to address the salaries that we now see. And I'll stand for your questions.
So Gabe, Chico, thank you so much. What we're going to do in this session is let all the presenters present, and then we'll take questions after that. So I'd like to invite Clint Thacker to come up and he has a presentation.
I think I got the right one. Yeah. This progresses the slides. Do you want to hold it or you want me to put it in here for you? Okay, great. Is it on? Can you just press it up or down? Thanks, Clint.
Good morning. Seems like it's just me holding you between the door. So just a little bit of background, and I hope that you stick with me here. This morning at 3:31 to be exact, my 5-year-old daughter comes in our bedroom with a fever and says her tummy aches. And so she slept with us most of the night. I got no sleep. And then she wakes up and bounces a basketball down the hallway like nothing happened, no fever. I'm like, good heavens. Yeah. I wish that happened if I just sleep with my parents, I'll feel better. But so no sleep. I thought, man, I need something to help me through this day. So the first time in 4 months, I went and I grabbed an energy drink, and holy cow, I'm bouncing off the walls. So the counselors today, if you see me, if you just go calm down, I'll stop talking so fast. So that's how confident I am I can get through this entire presentation, still with minutes to spare. So my name is Cliff Backer. I'm the Executive Director of the Animal Service Center in Sea Valley, here to talk to you today. Some of the things we want to talk to you today about are big picture items that the ASCMP has. Okay? Most of those, as you can see here, are worthwhile and very much worth the money that we're going to be asking. And another caveat, thank you so much for your support from the city. We are not part of the city, we're not part of the county, we're our own entity. You up to your, I don't want to say spending, but the amount you gave us when we asked for it, and we appreciate your support and hopefully forward from that. So this is one of the bigger slides we're going to spend time on today, and it's about positions. So several months ago, I was asked to give a presentation to the ASCMP board about what is our big picture. And the biggest of that is positions. I want to talk about 3 main positions today that are really the priority that we have. First one is the operations manager. This is an individual, it's in a new position, so it's not currently there. This is a position that is going to be in the middle of our management team, which is very important for us. Right now, we currently have 2 rescue coordinators. We currently have a grant administrator, and we have, stick with me, my brain's going 100 miles per hour. And we have a facilities person who fixes around the center, and another individual, a volunteer coordinator, that they all report to different individuals. So we need to centralize that. This also gives our department an opportunity for people to move up. And that was when we did a survey with the employees, that was the main number 1 complaint. Well, the number 1 complaint was salaries. And the number 2 was no opportunity to move up. So that was what that would give. It also centralized a lot of the reporting. Second one is a TNR coordinator. If you don't know what TNR is, I don't know where you've been. It's been a pretty vocal thing that's been happening, especially at the animal ordinance. We're again thankful for the support that the city has shown in making those changes. So, but we need somebody to coordinate between the animal control of the city, the ASCMP, and also the public. Those are the 3 main portions of a trap meter return program. So the coordinator, we said we could take and have that under ours. The next one I want to talk to you about is the HR analyst down towards the bottom. We currently are with the human resources with the city, and they do an amazing job for us. However, there are delays, and rightly so, because we have such a high turnover rate. And I know other city departments, we just heard, are also having issues and having problems. So there's a huge demand in HR right now. But we thought, why can't we take those responsibilities under our roof and provide that with, however, some caveats. One is we would totally be changing our onboarding. Imagine getting a letter from your future boss saying, welcome. This is what to expect your first day. These are some things that you can bring, prepare yourself, and kind of welcome to the family. That's the kind of place we want to build coming on, and it would be an HR analyst's job is to manage that program, have reporting, do the onboarding. So, and also a lot of their, like Bernice's Navarro's position, she's doing a lot of the HR job right now. So take some of the pressure off her onto a new position. The other positions that we have, you see animal caregiver, 3 positions, that's an increase. That's because we're getting a new center. Thank you to the public and the city of Las Cruces that did that for us. A new center is going to be completed, hopefully the end of September, looking at that, but we're going to need this bigger area. So we need more staff to clean it. So that's the increase there. The next one is an animal care specialist. Now the animal caregivers are the ones who do the cleaning. Animal care specialist is a brand new position, a reclassification. We're taking 2 animal caregiver spots, making them a specialist. And what that is a caregiver position where they clean, but they would also do a lot of our transporting. We drive rescue transports all over the region, especially California. We've gone to Oregon, Washington, Utah, Idaho, all those places. So their job would be to drive. So when they're not driving, they'd be an animal caregiver to be able to provide those services. Again, it also gives an opportunity for different priority or different jobs for the animal caregiver in the facility. So they could move up. That pay, it would be a little bit more pay as well. So it'll give opportunities for that. Foster coordinator there at the bottom is a position that's also a reclassification. We have an ever-growing foster program. So we need a coordinator to coordinate the people coming into foster or taking animal into their home and the animal service center. So this is our revenue. We're going from 3.8 million to 4.885. You'll never guess who is going to fund that revenue. Yeah, nobody guessed. Leanne, you want to take a guess? So right down here at the bottom, you see the county is currently at 1.45 million. The city is at 1.75 million. That was when I said thank you for that additional increase when we needed it. That was it. So we're asking 2.1 million from the county. That gives them a 45% increase that we're asking from them. The other 2 million is from the city. So again, we're splitting that in half. That's only a 20% increase from the city. Now you're saying, well, where are these funds going to be coming from? Or why are they? Well, I just explained some of the ones that we shared with you, but the expenses is what we're going to go over now. We're looking at a 28, 27, or 29% increase for the expenses. This is showing a lot of some of the things that we were talking about. More people means we're going to have more expenses coming through. This is how much it is of the personnel budget, and this is of the total budget. So our classified employees, which are employees, everybody that doesn't do salary pay is classified. So they make 43.8% of the personnel budget and 30% of the total budget. Councilor Steve, am I doing okay? Okay. If I'm talking too fast, just give me the notice. As you can see here, this is someone I'm talking about. Up 31%, FICA, Social Security 35%, Para 51%. These are all big increases that we're talking about. The other big increase is admin salaries. That is everybody that is salary driven, like me and my managers, and also the classified positions. That's their pay increase. The board, SCV board, yesterday just approved a salary increase for the ASCMB from January until June. The remaining budget from June, or from ongoing for the rest of all time and eternity, will be funded in our budgets coming forward. I'm committing to this so much that if we don't get it for some reason from the city or the county, we'll be cutting some of our operation costs to keep this salary increase for our staff. We need to have a salary increase, not only to mirror what the city's doing, but so my coworkers, my friends are able to quit their second jobs that they may have. They're able to focus on their one job that they enjoy, and they're also spending more time with their family. Is the main drive behind that. So that's those changes there. Whoops, wrong way. All right, so these are the big ones right here. Dental insurance, 98.8% increase. Health insurance, 165%. This is we went from 60/40 to 80/20. We had a lot of employees grab onto that new health insurance. So much so, like I said, 165% change in that. Life and disability insurance went up 45%. So that's where a lot of that drive is coming from for our increases. A lot of it we couldn't help. The ASCMB is split up into different project codes or budgets, as we kind of like to say. We are executive director, medical, kennel, and that's the total percentages of what we drive. And that's the total that we're asking for. Any questions? I didn't even know that was on there. That was neat.
Thank you. Thanks, Clint. So we have
One more agency speaker. I'd like to invite Gabe to come up and talk about Metro. Or Sergeant, I should know.
Gabe's fine.
Gabe's fine. Gabe does not have a PowerPoint, but I'm sure he's got some great talking points like you go. You go, Gabe. Let me take this down so it's not visual. Okay.
Morning, I'm Gabriel Aranivas. I'm a sergeant with the Las Cruces Police Department. I'm currently assigned as the commander of Metro Narcotics. I don't know if you're familiar, but Metro Narcotics is a multi-agency task force, a drug task force here in Doña Ana County. So when I speak about the budget that we run is split between the city and the county. We do run a total of 12 agents, 5 from the city, 5 from the county, 2 from state police. We have 3 supervisors, 1 from state police, 1 from the county, and myself. State police does have its own budget, so we don't cover any of their costs. The total budget hasn't changed from fiscal year of 2022 to 23. It's actually stayed the same of $681,086. The city provides $325,543 along with the county. Some of the concerns that I do see in regards to the budget is because the union is in negotiations. It might affect our overtime rate, which is provided by the city and the county. And my understanding is the county is waiting to see how the city comes out in regards to the negotiations, because they're also going to bump their deputies in pay as well. Some of the stuff that we've had to move around within our budget that was approved because of the cost of fuel, we've had to move money within our budget that had already been approved. And we've also moved some money because of our rolling surveillance. We purchase our own vehicles. And I don't know if you're familiar, but when we do purchase new vehicles for the agents, our old vehicles are recycled into undercover vehicles. So we still utilize those. That's pretty much about all I have. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Sergeant. For this upcoming year, were you expecting to have to do any other purchases for vehicles? And if so, was it already included in your budget?
So in 2022, we did purchase 1 vehicle. It is a marked K9 unit because we do have an interdiction K9 unit. But because of the cost of the equipment and everything that went into that unit, we're only able to purchase 1 vehicle. This next year, with the money that we have, we're planning on purchasing 2.
Okay.
So,
Thanks, Gabe. Let's see if they have any questions for. Okay. This is for this session. Does anybody have any questions for Hugo, for Clint, and for any more questions for Gabe? Seeing none?
Thank you, everyone. Honestly, I just really wanted to thank Clint for talking about what wages and healthcare would be to your team. I just really appreciated that. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing none? Okay, so we'll move forward. Thank you, guys. Okay, so this is our last little step. And then I've asked Ivo to give us some closing remarks for the day, for the closing of our budget retreat. So as you can see, the number 1 is our pre-budget meeting and retreat with council and city management. And that's where we are right now. We're in that step 1, that preparation. I will tell you that all of the departments, we opened level 1 a few weeks ago, or maybe about a month ago.
We're now at level 2, which is our director level. So we allow our program managers to input the budget. The directors have a chance, they have 2 weeks to look it over and make any tweaks. Level 3 is for the budget team. And what we start doing is which is step 2 is this budget entry. But on step 3, well, not step 3 over here, sorry. The bullet over here is CM review, final review. This is where we're going to be working on. So our first meeting with EBO and the city management team is on February the 4th. What we'll do is we'll give him, here's what the budget looks like right now. Everything that we can possibly think of will be in there. There might be even a kitchen sink in there. So after that, we start meeting with the individual departments. Barbara will have her group that she meets with that's underneath her. Connie will have his meetings. Eric will have his meetings. And of course, the direct reports for EBO, we have those meetings. And then we start coming together with the city manager and the team again. And then what we plan to do after that is have our very first work session. I think last year we had 3 work sessions, but we didn't have a budget retreat like this, where we introduced the priorities. So what we were hoping, I was talking to Mayor Pro Tem yesterday, what we're hoping is we'll have 1 work session where we'll bring back the data that we got today on the priorities, bring it forward to you along with some other budget, what it looks like. Then get your input at this work session. And then again, we have to have another work session as well. And we typically sometimes treat that as our public hearing as well. Sometimes we have the public hearing separately. That's really up to the mayor. We need to sit down and talk with the mayor and see how he wants to treat the public hearing. Actually, with the budget team, if you remember my initial PowerPoint, we talked about communication. So one of the things that Matt and I, if it's possible with COVID, we'd like to have possibly 2 meetings for the public as well, where we can get input from the public. And we'd like to offer too, if any of you are having district meetings, we're available if you would like for us to come and give a presentation of our budget as well. So we want to extend that to you as well. Because meeting, you have constituents that come and we want to be there for you if you need us to, and we will. So with that, then right after that, we will have the public notice where we have our proposed budget. That's what we have the last work session is our proposed budget. And then any little tweaks that you want us to do, we go in there. That proposed budget will be the last work session for the month of April. Then we will be bringing the approved resolution to you the last council meeting of May. We have to have our budget approved. That's a state DFA requires that our budget, and also it's in our city charter, that we adopt the resolution for the budget and for the CIP by June 1. So we always do it at that last meeting. And if we need to, if there's more tweaks, we can also call a special. Hopefully we don't need, I've never had to do that. So hopefully we won't have to do that. We try to be prepped. We try to be ready. That's why we start this process so early. And then once it's approved by council, then we submit it to the state. It's required to be to the state by the end of June. So that's why we have to bring it to you at the end of May to be approved. And with that, that is what we will do. Those are our next steps. And if you have any last minute questions.
Thank you, Leanne, so much and staff. This was excellent. I really appreciate everything that got put into it. I know it's not easy. My question is, there were some times that I felt rushed for time. We didn't hear from some of the other directors, and I often have spoken to people about FTEs. Like, when will we hear as a whole, as a body, from each of the directors that says, you know, this is our goal, we're limited here, there's some gaps here in terms of workforce. I often have felt since I've been here that that has been missed. And so when we have opportunity to hear from the directors specifically about what their needs are and what funding might that, what amount of money might that cost them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll take that. Typically, Mayor Pro Tem, we go through the process and we have our budget committee that goes through each one of these. And the process is that we go through, we meet with our department heads, we figure out whether or not these FTEs are appropriate, and then we bring to you after we've vetted. Now, if you want to be involved in any part of or be updated in any part of that stage, you're certainly welcome to, we can update you on what the requests are. But when we bring the budget to you, we've already had discussions with each one of our department heads. ACMs have discussions with their direct reports and CAO as well. And so, yeah, any time that process as we move along, you're welcome to get as much information as you need as we move through. You know, last year, as we went through the process, I held, you know, and I think you all were aware that I held off on FTE requests. And I, you know, mentioned the reason for that is so that we can see where we are. We wanted to make moves in our insurance, make moves in our pay before we understood what the full cost would be. Now that we know that, and it is a good point to bring up, because now we have a lot, there's a lot of requests and a lot of adjustments to be made when it comes to FT. So like I said, at any time, you'd be welcome to step in that process, and we can even include where we are at the, you know, we'll have a couple of work sessions where we can include that data at that particular point in time and have discussion, have a specific item to discuss about requested FTEs. In fact, I think we do that anyway, right?
Yes.
So that would be an opportunity to.
That would be good as a body. I'm not asking to sit on any of those meetings. I don't think that's what I'm asking. But and lastly, how do you identify which pots of money will you be taking, money to fulfill whatever goal or strategy that we've identified here? And I'm thinking more specifically, like Telstra funding, those kinds of things that we heard from Leanne about doing a strategic planning session related to that. But how do you work through where that money is going to come from?
That's a good question. It really depends on what the asks are. So you have certain capital projects that are already, coming from. So for example, for utilities, it comes from utilities, enterprise funds. We don't, general fund money doesn't go there. So that's where they have to come from. And certain funds that impact these can only, pay for certain projects. Certain projects that are assigned to capital funding. I think we can put together something that will identify. We can identify that for you, but it depends on what type of, anything that has to do with FTEs within the general fund are going to come strictly from general fund. I mean, there's really no other way to pay for that. Same thing for enterprise funds. If that's going to be FTEs there, they're going to come straight from there, straight out of operating. If it has to do with capital money, that's where we have different capital projects. That's where we have different types of funds that we can pull from, capital outlay grants, impact fees.
So I'm thinking about specifically Delilah's presentation specific to the unfunded mandate by council, right? And it's going to cost 1.something million. You figured out, I think, where to get that money, but I think about something like that. Like, we're asking you to do this. I don't want to, typically when something like that comes to us, there's a price tag, right? Yeah. And this one didn't. And I want to make sure that just because it's an enterprise fund doesn't mean that we can't provide that funding to her. So you know, that's a new one on me, right? And so I'm be willing to think about, you know, utilizing the general fund for some of that, because it's kind of costly, especially if it's going to be passed on to the ratepayer, which I don't want to see, and those that are more low income.
Sure.
And then I think about the other unfunded mandate with a project in specific at 8001 that Carla, right, spoke of, and I think about the lighting and street maintenance, and I know that that money has come from certain places, but I think about we can make a good case possibly for Telstra funding, right, because of such a poverty-stricken area, underserved area, those kinds of things. So I'm not sure that we have that kind of dialogue here to say, okay, what is the best funding mechanism? And I think I would like to be a part of that conversation.
For sure, and that's part of the budget dance every year.
Right.
That's what, I mean, that's the fun part of budgeting, is trying to figure out how to fund it and using what funds are available. But typically, we bring to you a plan that's we've already gone through which funds that we can pull from where, and we present it to you. How we do that, we can include that as well. Sure. Like a good utility director, Delilah would say, the enterprise fund, the general fund should pay for that. As a city manager, I would push it back on into enterprise fund. So, but that's part of the dance. That's part of the going through each fund and seeing what should be appropriate source.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Eva, and thank you, Leanne, and for all the staff that presented here today and helped. I really think that this gave us a really nice solid base as we go into the budget, and it's something that I know I really appreciate after the last 2 years have been very interesting, and so this is nice to be able to do it from this area. The only other consideration that I just wanted to point out before we leave, just because I think I'd be remiss if I didn't, is that within legal risk oversight, we've had some state changes too that are fairly significant and that will impact us. And I know they already are starting. And so as we go into budget, knowing that we need to have specific liability coverage and things like that, I just want to make sure that we're giving ourselves appropriate buffers so that mid-year, if something happens, we're not having to look at that general fund to cover items that's a detriment to other types of really important projects that I think we need and are necessary. So I really think that that's one area that I'm going to be really looking at as we move forward. So thanks. Thank you, everyone.
For sure, thank you.
Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Barbara. And yes, Ms. Rico, following up on Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Ganora's comments. And thank you, Delilah, for alerting us to having this resolution that is empty. I mean, you can't really implement it. So when our resolutions go either to legal, or they go to legal, could there be any, I guess with any resolution that involves money, could we get some feedback before it comes, or somehow have that built into the resolution? So it'd be a question of directing legal to tell them what the cost analysis is. And then when it comes to city council, we're not just, just like an empty, it's really an empty resolution. So would that be possible to do, Mr. Healy? Yeah. I said, Mr. Thank you.
So, Councilor Flores, each of our resolutions actually goes through a very complex workflow. We now in iCompass, thank you, Christine, have, it's wonderful. And so there is a section, the first section is, the department director, reading, making sure everything's in there. The next section is budget. And not only does it go to a budget analyst, but it also goes to either Matt and I. And so the first thing we look at, are they asking for funds? Is this a budget adjustment? And if it is, then we start working with them and also with city management on where do these funds need to come from? So unless the actual resolution is needing that budget in there and putting that budget in there and it doesn't requesting a budget adjustment, then, you know, that has to be part of the resolution. And then it goes to legal and legal reads it and has to sign off on it as well during this workflow process. So I do want to assure you that it goes through multiple hands before it goes to the council.
Well, Amy, Leanne. Leanne, so, you said that it goes through all of that, so why did this fall through the cracks? Did it fall through the cracks, or does the resolution specifically say, okay, all of you departments, make sure that this is feasible financially and otherwise? You know, not just the legality, but the economic impact or necessity. So what happened?
You actually had now we.
You need to fall down. It's your fault.
So this, I mean, this is a good case study here because there's a lot of resolutions that go through where the main reason is we don't know the cost. And so this, what she's asking for is for money to figure out what this costs. So we're not, I mean, this transition plan, this isn't the cost of the transition plan.
No, we understand that. I think we understand that, but what we then need to know is that then through all those processes and all those steps, I think something did fall through the cracks, quite frankly. And I'm not pointing any fingers because I don't know who to point them at. If I did, I would.
Well, you can point them here, right?
Oh, no. I think what's important here is not finger pointing or anything like that, but to assure, say, for example, you know, it's going through all those steps, and then they say, well, we really don't know because we need yada yada or this, that, or the other before we can even determine what the cost would be. And then the suggestion or something that would come back to the original request or framing of the resolution to include, in order to implement this, we need to go to an outside, whatever, but to get the ball rolling and not just to wait a year later to find out from the director that we can't do it.
Well, in a situation like this, for example, we had a counselor who wanted it on regardless of the cost.
Yeah.
Right, had a timeline, get it on, get it approved, right? That's how this came about, to be honest. And so now we're just trying to figure out how do we make this a reality? And that's what Delilah comes back, she says, this is what we need to do, we need to put the transition plan. And then she comes back and asks for a budget. The fact that it's been approved, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that helps us move forward. If it's not approved, then we don't do anything.
Right, I mean, it's better, you're absolutely correct, I agree with you, it's better than nothing. However, it would have been more effective and more efficient and in terms of things just moving along, had we, and as you say, I think you're talking about Counselor Sword.
Yeah, and he'll tell you that.
He's not here to defend himself, but I will.
No, I'm not. I mean, he'll tell you that. He'll say, he actually told me I want this on.
And in fact, I came across that resolution and I wanted to give it to Becky because I think she's going to inherit a lot of, you know, not inherit, but.
He actually.
Yeah,
wants it on regardless of the cost.
Yeah. But yeah, regardless of the cost, but there was a missing link, a missing step there. So if our budget system, as Leanne pointed out, goes through this, that, and the other, that should have been spotted. They should have spotted that missing step. I'm just saying. Thank you.
And I didn't mean to overreact, but.
Oh, you did.
Yes, you did.
But I just want to say, you know, you have to be patient with us because we have this cycle and Evo and I do go back and forth about, you know, you need to take care of this or you need to take care of that. And so, and it's more just, you know, we have to be patient because if you give us a mandate today, we can't react tomorrow because, I mean, this is January planning for June. And so just, you know, be patient with us because we will find the solutions no matter what.
In all fairness to Counselor Sword, I think it's because he was on council. In all fairness to Counselor Sword, he was on council for 12 years. And I think that his last 2 years, he knew that was it. And I think he just felt like, get it done, and we'll take care of, you know, put some Band-Aids on it later. Thank you. Thank you.
And if I may, Councilor, again, just want to clarify, even with Councilor Sorger, I think it's accomplishing what he wanted to accomplish. So he wanted it on so that we wouldn't drag this on.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so that was his purpose. His purpose was get it on. I want it on before I go, so that I know you're gonna move on this. And it accomplishes that. We could have easily, I mean, we could have contacted him and said, what's gonna cost this? And so we need to iron things out. And you know, he just didn't want it to drag on. This wasn't it's just a fact. It wasn't a big on it. It was making sure that he just wanted to make sure that it didn't fall through the cracks. And so he wanted it on. And it is, I think it's accomplishing the purpose. I think we got a plan in place, so we're gonna get one. And we'll accomplish it. We'll get it funded from the enterprise fund.
Thank you. I say the feds. I say the feds.
As long as it doesn't, you know, push the cost over to the, it won't. I think you said that.
Yeah.
So you do it.
Thank you for that, and I'm glad Councilor Flores raised that because that's one of the things I wanted to wrap up too. But honestly, I just really wanted to thank you all for putting this together. As Mayor said, it's happened before. I didn't realize that. Obviously, Councilor Studio and I came in, and literally 2 months later we shut down. So it's been a really strange couple of years. So this just felt normal-ish and optimistic and good. And so I just really wanted to say thank you to all of you. Because as much as you asked us to have patience with you, I asked that for myself as well, because I'm learning. And like I said, I think now I'm literally going to ask every single time, how much will this cost? Because I think that's really important. But I do think there needs to be a balance between let's just do it, let's get it done, and we'll figure it out. Because there's not always going to be federal dollars, right? And I don't, you know, while it looks good on paper, while it looks good as a story, it's not going to mean anything if we can't fund it, if we can't figure out how to pay for it. And so I don't want us to get in that cycle, but I understand, that's what I mean, there's a balance, because I also don't want us to get in the cycle of like, let's slow it down, let's talk more about it, and get stuck in this loop of just talking about it. I don't like that either. As a talker, I don't like talking about stuff all the time. I love action. And so perhaps part of, given that there is this process in Muni Code, perhaps part of the presentations that come to council can include that piece, right? And here, for the ones that are relevant to it, and here's the budget, and here's what budget, the cost analysis, and here's what we figured out. I would like to see that immediately, and that way we can make smart decisions about, well, do we want to pass this so that we can figure it out, or do we want to stop, slow down, and figure out where funding is going to come from first? That would be helpful for me. But I just really, really wanted to thank you all. I feel really excited about where we're headed, and that we're just hitting all the check marks in terms of how we recover, but beyond that, you know, how we thrive and how we make sure that everyone in our community is ready. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem. I know that Councilor Baker-Stupi talked about really lobby for Tony Gomez Park, I think, is that the name of the park? And so I'm thinking, I saw a number of parks that need updates, and we're going into our GeoBond cycle. Could that be a thing that we do to continue to improve our parks? Because so many of them, right, landed in that big umbrella of the question. So or Councilor Baker-Stupi, I know you're doing master planning in there. So how long will that take? Because then I want to know those things before I say, I mean, every park, and I get it, I hear what she says, and she made a very compelling argument. So it's one of those things, where do we get the funding? And it's timing, because you have the master plan. I know I've been through master plans before, that's gonna take a little bit, right? 3 to 6 months, 9 months, I'm not sure. Does that land us into the next cycle of GeoBond, and or do we put it in there this next budget year with the general fund? Those are things that I'm thinking about, because that's not the only part, there were several others dam, Bird Lake, Gallagher, I had a few, Pioneer, that has a master plan and has several phases already. We have some for just the gazebo, but there's 2 or 3 phases. So those are things that I think would be helpful from Parks perspective with funding and how do we get it and what do you have currently going in there? What do you need?
Yeah, for sure. Are you looking at?
I was looking at Sonia.
I'll put you on the spot.
No, I didn't mean to, but I felt like, Councilor Venus really made a very compelling argument and we should really listen to that, but so did Councilor Bincomo and about Bird Lake and the kinds of numbers of complaints. And when we're talking about quality of life, Parks is a way to get there, right?
Because I can address the funding part of it. After that.
Well, right now, thank you for the question. Right now, we do have a lot of parks that are in need of a master plan. We have our oldest district and our oldest parks are right now in District 1. So right now, we are working on the trees. That's where our oldest trees are. We just went and got funding from council about a month ago regarding that. And so that process will start here. And that's going to be, we're going to go through each district. And we've already outlined who's going to go first, which is District 1, and then go all the way through. It'll take us 3 years to get it all done. And then we also have the new planting that goes with it. That's one series that's happening. The second is going through our older parks and trying to figure out how we master plan these, where are we going with them, what's going to happen. We get a lot of requests, as you know, from our council on a very regular basis about all kinds of things. And we try to put them up as fast as we can. We look at them and say, can we get this one off the list really, really quickly? And then we also have constituents from our community that want plaques, that want whatever the case may be. And sometimes they can get really loud, and I understand that too. And so we have a balance across the board. And then we have our master plan, our Parks and Rec master plan that helps us guide us on where we're headed on those things. So it really does come down to funding. And Leanne knows this, that people got a taste of it last year. Every year Parks and Rec comes with really huge asks, even if they tell us it's a flat year. Even if they tell us, you know what, we're not gonna get increases, it doesn't matter. I still come with all the things that we need because I need to be able to say, I brought it forward. I bring things that are coming soon. For example, the community pool. I brought that a couple of years ago, knowing it was coming this year. And I just keep bringing it because I don't want anybody to forget about that. The East Mesa Public Rec Center, when the Go On passed, we started putting all that together and I brought that forward as well. So when I bring it, there's no surprises. And so that time is now. There's a lot of funding that we're going to be asking for people, equipment, and things like that, because all these things are going to land in our hands in the next few months. Plus, the new building is happening. So there's a lot of build happening in District 5. We're getting a ton of parks coming on. The last 3 years, we've had a bunch. We're about to bring on 2. Just now, we have 4 more in the hopper with a developer in that area. So by the end of the year, that's 6. And I have to do with who we have right now. So that's a tough one, but it's all about balance. Now let people talk about money.
So just to answer the question, that's exactly where I would put that when it comes to parks. Now, I like to follow principles when it comes to geo bonds. Geo bonds get, that's directly from our property taxes. And so if you think about where that funding source of property tax, I look at property values and I look at things that affect that quality of life and those types of things. That doesn't always fall in line with what the public wants. But I think good practice, that's exactly where you put parks, is in geo bonds. I mean, we're looking at our impact fee schedule to figure out our structure of our impact fee. That's another place you pull for parks projects. So when we look at funding, one thing to do with budgeting, we always got to make sure that one-time money goes to one-time expense. Ongoing money goes to ongoing expenses. So when we see an increase in say just our general fund balance, we can't look at that as man, that we're just gonna go spend that because that has to go toward our ongoing expenses, which will increase with FTEs. That's where FTEs come from. That's where we fund our FTE, pay investments, things like that come from, just the increase in ongoing revenue that we get from property tax and DRT. DRT is a little volatile. Property tax is probably the most sustainable tax because it adjusts regardless of the economy. But in my opinion, that would be a great place to put it. But there's other thoughts about GEO, right? There's affordable housing that we talked about putting in GEO, in our GEO bond. But those are discussions we can have, and I really do think we can present in a way that helps you to be involved in that, and that we can show how we've arrived at. We can show better how we've arrived at the budget we're presenting. That's good feedback for us.
I just think we're paying for the sins of past councils that put things on and don't, or right, the development happens and it's incomplete, or, I feel, and then you have that aging infrastructure, like in District 1, right? And the whole idea of we have trees that need to be cut down, and you hear people are so passionate about their trees. And I get it. Ask Councilor Baker-Stubbe. She and I probably had the most, but they're dead and or diseased and need to be torn down. But there's been a gap of time that we hadn't done any planting, right? So I guess that there's just so much. I don't know how to do it. It's when you take the big box.
He's chopping
But I'm worried, and I've been worried about, do we just keep expanding like the East Mesa Recreational Center and with just a flat, no increase in FTEs, those things, and I'm concerned about, I'm really concerned about that.
For sure. Mayor Pro Tem, I just want to say too that Sonia is correct. They are in all our departments. They do bring their wish list. They come, and they're not holding back when they come in and present the needs. I don't remember how many FTEs Sonia requested last year.
Well, how many? And how many did you get?
She didn't get any.
I didn't think so.
Didn't get.
Keep asking.
How many?
But they'll be coming, like I
There
said.
were some contracts.
They'll be coming. They'll be coming this year. And again, there was a reason for that. They'll be coming.
No rhyme, but.
Okay, next we have Councilor Baker-Stubbe, but before we go to her, I just wanted to say with respect to the GEO bond process, when we ask what kinds of projects or proposals will be coming forward, just a reminder that we will be going through an input process, not only of course with our governing body, but with the community, so that we can bring forward proposals that will be supported by the community for that purpose. So Councilor Baker-Stubbe.
Thank you, Barbara. And I think you brought up some great points, Mayor Pro Tem, and I really think for us as electeds, we're in a very unique time. I think we're all very connected with each other, and we have the ability to kind of take a look. Obviously, you talked about past sins and things of other councils, but at the same time, now we can all look and we know what projects are happening in our own districts. We recognize that other councilors may not know everything, but when we see projects come up, we know that there has been movement in parks in districts 5 and 6, and Ninja Park is coming on, and at least one of those that I'll have to try. But we can see that there's been movement in progress. So then we can look at the eyes of equity and say, okay, you know what? I do have things that are moving. I have had things that are moving in the last few years in my district. Now, when you hear different proposals from other districts and you see that there's an equity issue, now you can look at that lens too, and we can use it to balance, because I know we're all going to champion for our areas and we're going to continue to do so. But we also can look at that equity lens as well and say, it's time to look at these other parks and these other areas. And if we're serious about addressing different spots like the public safety, aged infrastructure, even that El Paseo corridor, then we're gonna look at these other parks and say, it's time. Maybe that should be a priority as well, while we're still advocating for our own districts. And so I think that's part of the process here. And this type of format gives us the opportunity to make those cases. So we really do appreciate being able to do that. And hopefully we'll be having more of these conversations so that we can make better plans. And then as we transition in and out, we're leaving our, the next individuals with those great plans too, and a path forward for everybody so that this city is growing together. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councilor Boyce.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you so much, Councilor Rita. I totally agree with having the council looking at the entire city, and yes, we have our particular interests in our respective districts, but we have to look at how the entire city is impacted, and I've always believed that my vote is very important insofar as how it affects other districts. But the question I have for you, Mr. Peely, and I don't think anybody from development is here, so really spent.
Maybe online.
Are they online? So my question is this, some years ago, before I was on city council.
Larry is, okay.
Larry? Okay, so some years ago, there was this Nambe Art development. And that's in District 6, just below, just near, off of, it doesn't matter which street it is. Well, anyway, but I can't think of the street right now. Just south of 70. At any rate, so Moscato, and as I find out later, it's really Moscato and Royal Jones, but and apparently Moscato, according to Royal Jones, is a minority holder in this big corporation of development that they have. What do I know? That's what said. But at any rate, John Moscato had promised those people in that development, that park, it's a gated community, that a park would go in. And I don't know if you're familiar with that issue, Sonia.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it was and he didn't go through it. And then, so the homeowners association there sued him. And then they settled for $135,000. But when I was elected, they were still fuming about it. And so I met with them right away. And I called John and I said, there's 100 people here that want to meet with you right away. I really didn't even know what was going on, but just being responsive to constituents. So, so I met with him beforehand, and then he said, I'm not going to meet with 100 people. I said, why not? They're the ones that you settled with. You should. And he said, well, I'll only meet with about 20. So I conveyed that back, and they weren't happy with that. I said, you know, I'm just trying to negotiate, and I came on the scene after the fact. So they said, okay, we'll get 20 people. Well, only 12 showed up. And I, you know, had all these rooms and chairs set up. But the point though is that they were still very upset with Moscato. And when I met with them, and he said, well, we settled. And I said, well, they had a lousy attorney. There's no way in hell I would have settled for $135,000 because it takes more than that to have a park. So my question is this, apropos of all these developments, that's the background, and that's what makes, you know, my little brain think sometimes. The impetus behind this question is that this was a frustration that Councilor Sword held forever, is that there weren't enough parks being built in with, you know, like agreeing with developers. So how is that agreement come upon? They build the park, and then what happens after that? Does it become city property? Do they still own it? Who maintains it? And yada, yada, so on and so forth. And then also, Sonia, how that Sagecrest Park right off of Rogona Parkway near Frontier, you know, near the dam. Does the city own that? And how did that come about? And so I just want to make sure that is it possible that in future developments we can hold we can hold developers or, developers accountable to making commitment to having, enough parks. Because I think District 5 is growing even more rapidly than District 6. It just seems that way. And so, and I'm really concerned about parks, because parks is a big part of having a beautiful city. And I think that Councilor Stubbe said that. When people are looking at coming to relocate, they look at parks and streets. And we want to, I feel very strongly about attracting young families. That's why I'm thrilled that Eco Peely has 1 million kids, and then we have our assistant city manager coming in with, his beautiful children too. And it just makes it more of a vibrant thing. And what I've said to David Weir and Larry Nichols is, please don't make this a retirement community with, while it says that we're the 15th best whatever rated, don't put a banner in our city lobby, and don't broadcast it. We want young, vibrant families to come, and then we want our people who live here to stay here. So I know I'm going on and on, but this is very near and dear to me, and I hope I made my concerns and my questions clear. So thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I get all of that. And if I don't, please remind me. So prior to me, there were some agreements that were done with developers to not either pay the park impact fees, to pay less than the park impact fee, or no, it's not built in. Those were agreements that were made. Some were put on paper, some were a handshake, some were on an email. I know this because when I came on board as a director, I got a bunch of these. One of them I got was the one for Kaya Willow. And then others started popping up, and there's still some that are out there. And unfortunately, some of them are in District 5 that we're still going to be dealing with for a while because it hasn't been built yet. And in some instances, home divisions were done, subdivisions were done, and they didn't put a park. And they said they would build it later, but later hasn't gotten here yet. And so when they made those agreements, they didn't put a later date. Okay, so it's still spinning out there. But in the meantime, we have to answer those questions as to why there isn't one there. And then trying to go back in now where they're all built out and trying to find some land in there is virtually impossible. So that's what's happening with District 5 a lot, because that was the district that really took off, and that's when these kinds of things happen. So when I came in, we started looking at that. I said, we can't do those things, and we can't do business that way. So what we've been doing moving forward since I got here is we do have agreements right now in a resolution for, yes, they are written. We do reimburse with park impact fees. We do talk to the developer about what kind of park. Right now, it's a minimum of 2 acres. Before, we got all kinds of shapes and sizes. Sometimes we had to share that park space with Public Works, and it was a drainage system. That's where we got Gomez Park. That's how we got Brendan Park. That's how we got a whole bunch of parks. All the parks are like that. And those are difficult because I can't put playgrounds on the bottom. And people don't understand that. The water will just eat it away. You entice people to come in and play it. You put it there, it must be safe. And it's not. So we have a lot of those issues to deal with as well. But moving forward, it's a minimum of 2 acres. We sit down with the developer on the front end. We used to come in at the end. So the only pieces of land left were the drainage structures or these little itty bitty pieces. Now I work with CD and we come in on the front end. They come talk to us first. We start talking about where the land's gonna be, where the park's gonna look like. That's how we're getting the Ninja Park. That's how we got a skate stop. That's how we got some different parks that are happening in Metro Airfit, is because we're now at the front of the line instead of at the end. So it's going to take some time, and it's going to be really difficult to try and address what's happened in the past, but we're trying. I just don't make any promises on that one. And hopefully we're almost through with all the other agreements that are out there. So hopefully have already stopped coming in. And then we can continue to move forward and have some really good dynamic parks in this area and to do things differently, because we like doing things different. We like to try new things. We're not afraid to do that. Some things work out great, some things not so great, and that's okay. We just try again. But that's who we are, Parks and Rec, and that's the kind of team we have. And we can do a lot of different things, and so we're moving in that direction. So I hope I answered all your questions.
No, you didn't. Okay. Sagecrest Park.
Oh,
Thank
you
you,
did.
Sonia.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. You did do very thorough. And I think that my point here is, and probably with my fellow counselors, is that we just want to make sure we have parks. And I like to see pocket parks, you know, even in, you know, like maybe some of the landfill, you know, the infill, or whatever it's called, infill areas, and, you know, the little tiny little parks maybe. And I know that the mayor and I think Gabe Vasquez had brought up this point about maybe buying some property and making it parks or a community center. Remember the one in Nevada? And was that with our, well, anyway, to buy, there was just this house or this, a house in the corner. And Gabe said, why don't we buy that land and make it a community center, you know, like, and make it really available for accessible for children, you know, like an after school or whatever. So so that's a concern I have about other parts of the city. And then because 5 and 6, districts 5 and 6 are just, you know, taking off like wildfire. And I just want to make sure. But Sagecrest, tell me about Sagecrest Park, because that's a very nice park.
Sagecrest,
because it has bathrooms too.
Right, it does belong to the city. So when a developer builds their park, it doesn't come, they have to deed it to the city. So before it gets deeded to the city, we do the walkthrough to make sure everything is in place. They put in the type of irrigation we want, et cetera, and it's all good to go before we take it over. Because the second we take it over, we're responsible for all the maintenance on it. Once that happens, it belongs to the city. So when it's being built, it's not ours yet. So Sagecrest is a city park. It is on that list that we have to do another master plan with. There's some things that we, with a lot of our parks, our older parks, there's a lot of things that we need to go in and fix. We just don't have all that funding for it because we are an operations unit. We deal with all the daily operations and daily maintenance. When it comes to those types of things, I have to come to ECO and ask for that funding. And Parks and Rec lives in the general fund, and so that's usually where I get my money. So the general fund's doing great. I hope that I have a great year. If it's not doing so great, that's what makes us really worried.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Anybody else?
So you thought I was gonna end this with some, and you know, that was a really great discussion. So yeah.
Yeah, get my PowerPoint.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be quick. I know we're just at the end. Leanne told me earlier, I gotta wrap up. It says, you're the mayor, and mayor's not here, but Mayor Pro Tem's here. So I'm gonna say a few words and then Mayor Pro Tem, you can wrap us up. That's okay? Just, if I can, so first, I really want to thank Leanne, Barbara, and Matt, her staff for putting this wonderful. Really, you hit the spot there with some of the requests that were coming from council and from staff. So thank you so much for putting this together. Just a couple of things. Thank you also, council. This has been enlightening to me just to hear from you more, you know, as a group on some of your priorities. When we talk about budget, I like to think of the budget document as the ruling document. Now, our comprehensive plan is the scriptures for our city. But this ruling document, we want to say it's the ruling documents because the only way we can implement anything in that plan it comes to the budget. And so the other thing is, you know, being a charter city, there's some lines between council and what the day-to-day operations are. And I know you're all sensitive to that. But this is the time where you get to get into it because we got to come to you for the money. And that's where all this happens. And so any opportunity we get to get input from you throughout this budget process is welcome, but we would appreciate it. Any opportunity, anytime you need to talk to staff about the questions you have, things you want to go line by line even, please, this is the time to do it. Because this sets the vision for the city for this year, this upcoming fiscal year. So in a sense, it is that ruling document. So please know it's welcome from staff to give your input, to ask questions. I had a counselor, I can say this, and we're really good friends. We just texted the other day. He was so far on the other side where he never, through his whole time on the council, never voted for the budget. And he used to come because he said we shouldn't be taxed at all. And so he would never vote for the budget. And the rest of the councilors, they wanted to call his bluff one time and make him the swing vote. Because he could easily vote no, because he knew everybody was gonna vote yes. And so he'll come and he would come with his brown paper bag to lunch or retreat and look at everybody like you're using tax dollars for nothing. So, and but even with that, he did so much for the budget. He helped us to really look at things in a really efficient way. There was so much contribution that he brought to the table. One of the best counselors that I worked with in my previous city. And we still give him a hard time about that. So don't ever think that your contribution that isn't making a difference in how we move things along. And so I just want to say that the other thing is, as we move forward, this upcoming year, there's two quotes that I always use. I share it a lot. I wear it out. Two of my most favorite quotes I always use. To do something you've never done before, you got to do something you've never done before. That's number one. And the other one is, the world will step aside for those who know where they're going. And so I like to, when I think about how we prepare our budget and the culture of this organization, those two quotes should govern how we address things, how we approach things. No matter how sophisticated we have to become, we will always be burners. We'll always be rolling up our sleeves. We'll always be holding a shovel. And that's what I love about this city. That's what I love about coming to this city and this staff. I've never met so many grinders, my department heads, my staff, and so I really appreciate them. Their staff full of grinders. And this council, you all work hard. The mayor was telling me the other day, it's like, yeah, most councils, the previous, they don't do anything. This council likes to do work. This council works. They work. So you'll all of them, they all work. And so he also appreciates that. I tell you, he also recognizes how much you guys work. And so I'll leave it at that. Mayor Pro Tem, if you won't have anything to conclude on behalf of the council.
Once again, staff, see many of the directors online. Thank you so much. This has been really invaluable. I heard the other day from someone that I respect a lot that she wished that the community cared about children and especially foster children like they do cats. And it kind of, I sort of sat there and I thought, wait a minute, I do care. There's so many of us that care, right, about children and families. We all do. And, you know, as it's been said before, budgets are moral document. And Leanne, I really appreciate you putting that pie chart up because that's really what our budget should be reflective of, right? And so I think community prosperity or harm prosperity was the highest percentage. So I appreciate each and every one of you and my council. I'm so grateful to sit with you every day, really, and work through this stuff. And I just want to leave with this quote. I came across this quote Monday evening after our homelessness discussion. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I just want you to lead with that. That's what we're trying to do, is make the field an even playing field for everybody, especially our children and families. So I appreciate you. I really do. Thank you. Thank you.
So before everybody leaves, Elizabeth, I think reached out to Mandy. There's quite a few of you with crimson colors on. And Mandy asked if we could get a group picture if possible. So I'm going to actually let Elizabeth be the one to organize that. And of course, we're still here. It's only 11:36, but hopefully everybody's questions have been answered. But thank you so much, everyone.